So let me tell you about the day the Galactic Council made the worst decision in recorded history. And trust me, I was there. Front row seat to the apocalypse, if you will. My name is Vekthor, senior diplomat from the Quilmer Consortium, and I have seen some stupid things in my 40 cycles of service. But approving the execution of Darian Hale? That took the grand prize for catastrophic idiocy. The council chamber buzzed with that particular brand of pompous self-satisfaction that comes right before everything goes horribly wrong. Ambassador Threx from the Vornathi Empire stood at the central podium, his triple-jointed arms spread wide in what he probably thought was a commanding gesture. The human known as Darian Hale has been found guilty of 17 counts of unauthorized planetary interference, Threx announced, his voice dripping with the kind of authority that makes you want to punch someone. The sentence is death by atmospheric dispersal. Execution scheduled for dawn cycle, planetary standard time. I shifted uncomfortably in my hover seat. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. The other delegates nodded along like a bunch of trained scavengers at feeding time. Representative Morix actually smiled, her beak clicking in approval. The Zenthari observers' tentacles waved in what I had learned was their version of applause. Nobody seemed to remember what Darian Hale had actually done. Sure, he interfered with 17 planets. But the details? Those were important. Those 17 planets were all under Vornathi occupation. Hale had freed approximately 3 billion sentient beings from what amounted to glorified slavery. But hey, who cares about context when you have regulations to follow, right? Does anyone wish to speak against this judgment? Threx asked, clearly expecting silence. I should have kept my mouth shut. I really should have. But apparently, my survival instinct was on vacation that day. I do, I said, standing up. The chamber went quiet. You could have heard a microorganism sneeze. Threx's eye stalks swiveled toward me with the speed of someone who just stepped on something unpleasant. Diplomat Vekthor. How unexpected. Please, enlighten us with your wisdom. Oh, the sarcasm was thick enough to cut with a plasma blade. Has anyone considered that executing a human might be, and I'm just spitballing here, a monumentally bad idea? I looked around the room. Blank stares. Anyone? No. Just me then. Morix made that annoying clicking sound again. The human is alone. He has no backup, no fleet, no government willing to claim him. He is, by all legal definitions, a rogue element. That's exactly what worries me, I muttered. But the vote was already in motion. Green lights flashed across the chamber like a disease spreading through a population. Guilty. Execution approved. Case closed. I sat down heavily, my primary stomach churning. After the session, I did what any rational being would do. I accessed the human database. All of it. Every scrap of information the galaxy had managed to compile about these bizarre creatures from Sol 3. What I found made my blood run cold. Humans had this thing they called the Kinslayer Protocol. It was buried deep in their cultural psychology, written into their very DNA through millennia of evolution. The rule was simple and absolutely terrifying. You kill one of them? Fine. You might have had a reason. But you execute one of them through official channels, through government decree, through the cold machinery of bureaucratic murder? Well, that was different. That was when they stopped seeing you as an adversary and started seeing you as a problem that needed solving. Permanently. I tried to call an emergency session. My request was denied. I tried to contact human space directly. My communications were blocked by Threx himself, citing protocols about interfering with internal council matters. So I did the only thing I could do. I went to the detention level to see Darian Hale myself. The guards let me through after scanning my credentials 17 times. Apparently, security was tight. As if that would matter. Hale sat in his cell, looking remarkably calm for someone scheduled to die in approximately 9 hours. He was reading something on a data pad, his expression neutral. Mr. Hale, I began. He looked up. His eyes were brown, which I had learned meant nothing special among humans. But there was something in that gaze that made me want to step backward. Intelligence. Calculation. And underneath it all, something that looked suspiciously like amusement. Let me guess, he said, his voice carrying that particular casual tone humans used right before things got interesting. You're here to tell me that executing me is a bad idea. Yes, actually. Very bad. Apocalyptically bad. He smiled. Actually smiled. Did you tell them about the Kinslayer Protocol? My mouth went dry. You know about that? Friend, I'm counting on it. And that's when I realized the horrible truth. Darian Hale wasn't a prisoner waiting for execution. He was bait. The smile on Hale's face wasn't the expression of a doomed man. It was the smile of someone who had already won and was just waiting for everyone else to figure it out. "You set this up," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "You wanted them to execute you." Hale leaned back against the wall of his cell, completely relaxed. "I liberated 17 worlds, Vekthor. 17. And the Galactic Council was going to do absolutely nothing about it because the Vornathi Empire has 4 seats and enough economic leverage to buy 12 more." He paused. "But executing me? That changes the equation entirely. How many are coming?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "Enough." I grabbed the energy bars of his cell, my claws scraping against the metal. "You have to understand what you're doing. This will start a war. Billions could die." "Billions were already dying," Hale said, his voice suddenly hard. "They were just dying quietly, in work camps and processing facilities where people like you could pretend not to notice." He stood up, walking closer. "I gave the council every chance to do the right thing. I submitted formal complaints. I provided evidence. I even offered to testify before a tribunal. Know what I got? 17 counts of unauthorized planetary interference." He wasn't wrong, and that made it so much worse. "The execution happens at dawn," I said. "That's 7 hours from now. If you could just delay it somehow, maybe I could." "Vekthor," he cut me off gently. "Go home. Get your family and anyone you care about as far from council space as possible. You seem like a decent being. I'd hate for you to get caught in the crossfire." I wanted to argue. I wanted to find some logical solution that would prevent the coming catastrophe. But looking at Hale's face, I knew it was already too late. The humans were coming. I spent the next 6 hours trying to evacuate the station. I managed to get my assistant and her spawn onto a transport heading for the outer colonies. Most of the other delegates thought I had lost my mind. Frex actually laughed when I suggested he leave. "One human dies and you think the sky is falling?" he said, his eye stalks quivering with amusement. "You always were too emotional, Vekthor." I didn't bother responding. I just kept packing. Dawn arrived right on schedule. The execution chamber was filled with observers, all eager to witness what they thought was justice being served. I stood in the back, my emergency kit clutched in my primary appendage, scanning the sensor feeds on my personal device. Nothing. Empty space. No ships. No anomalies. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Hale had been bluffing. Maybe the humans didn't actually care about one rogue operative who had gone too far. The atmospheric dispersal field activated. Hale stood in the center, still calm, still smiling that infuriating smile. The field would tear apart his molecular structure in approximately 90 seconds. It was considered humane by Council standards, which tells you everything you need to know about Council standards. 60 seconds. My sensor device remained blank. Nothing approaching. Nothing at all. 40 seconds. Threx was making a speech about justice and order and the rule of law. I wasn't listening. 20 seconds. Hale looked directly at me through the transparent barrier. He mouthed 2 words. "Watch closely." 10 seconds. The lights went out. Every single light on the station. Emergency power. Main grid. Backup systems. Everything died simultaneously. And in that moment of absolute darkness, I heard it. The sound of reality itself being torn open. When the emergency lights flickered on 3 seconds later, the execution chamber wasn't empty. It was very, very full. Darian Hale stood exactly where he had been, completely unharmed. The dispersal field was gone. And surrounding him, in full combat armor that seemed to absorb light itself, were approximately 50 human soldiers. They had appeared from nowhere. No ships. No warning. Just suddenly there. But that wasn't the scary part. The scary part was the figure standing directly behind Hale, taller than the others, armor covered in markings I couldn't read. And when she removed her helmet, I saw a face that matched the intelligence files I had been reading all night. Commander Elena Forge, the Kinslayer herself, leader of the human retaliation fleet. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice carrying through the shocked silence like a blade through flesh. "Ladies, distinguished delegates, we need to have a conversation about proportional response." Threx made a sound like a deflating balloon. Morix had gone completely still, her beak hanging open. Commander Forge walked slowly around the chamber, her soldiers maintaining perfect formation. "You tried to execute one of ours through bureaucratic murder. dressed it up in legal language and council votes. Thought that made it legitimate. She stopped directly in front of Threx. It doesn't. This is an act of war. Threx managed to squeak out. No, Forge said calmly. This is a rescue operation. The act of war comes next. She smiled, and it was the coldest thing I had ever seen. You have 72 hours to dissolve the current council structure, release all political prisoners in Vernathi space, and establish an independent tribunal to investigate crimes against sentient beings. If you comply, we leave peacefully and this incident is forgotten. And if we refuse? Morix asked. Forge's smile widened. Then you get to find out why humans don't have a word for mercy in our military vocabulary. She turned to leave, her soldiers moving with her like a single organism. Hale followed, pausing only to give me a small nod. They vanished the same way they had arrived. Reality folded, and they were gone. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates screaming. Security alarms blaring. Threx demanding answers that nobody had. I just stood there, my emergency kit feeling suddenly very inadequate. 72 hours later, the council voted unanimously to accept every single human demand. Darian Hale sent me a message 3 months after that. Just 2 words. Thanks, friend. I never told anyone about our conversation before the execution. Some secrets are better kept quiet. But I learned something important that day. Something the whole galaxy learned. You can fight humans. You can even beat them sometimes. But you execute one of them through the cold machinery of law and bureaucracy? That's when you find out what humanity really is. And trust me, you don't want to find out. So what did you think? Did this story surprise you? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this sci-fi story, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe for more mind-blowing science fiction stories every week. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.